Iowa's News Now Sports brings you Black and Gold Glory, your all-access pass to all things Hawkeyes. This is Eye on the Hawks.
A lot of talk about 200 the last couple days, and I could throw out a number 2 also, and that would be 2 as in losses to Western Michigan since I've been here. So kind of give a little perspective here about, what our chore is this week.
That's about as Kirk Ferentz as it gets, folks. 200 wins now in his head coaching career and still hung up on things from 2000 and 2007. Welcome to Eye on the Hawks pre-Western Michigan edition. Mitch Fick with Owen Sebring and Mike Howell. Apparently the scars are still aplenty from 16 years ago, a loss to Bill Cubitt's squad there at Kinnick in 2007 of the Broncos that made the Hawkeyes 6-6. One of only a couple of times in the last 20 years that Iowa didn't make a bowl game. They were bowl eligible, did not go to a bowl game after that 2007 season. Final thoughts as we start. We'll wrap up just thoughts on that Cy-Hawk win on Saturday at Jack Trice.
I don't know if we touched on this on the podcast on Sunday, but prior to the Cy-Hawk game, we talked all about that this year's special teams battle was a little bit more significant between Iowa and Iowa State, and Iowa came out opening drive literally and exerted their special teams dominance by blocking that field goal. And so this is a Iowa special teams unit that is what it has been in the past.
Yep, it was, and of course a couple field goals for Drew Stevens as well. So that is where we are as we head into Western Michigan, and maybe the biggest news of the week so far in terms of just health and whatnot. Cade McNamara says for the first time since going down at that Kids Day scrimmage, he's feeling as good as he can. Of course, missed a couple weeks at camp because of that quad injury. He has been catching up to make up for the lost camp time. Maybe now coming into Western Michigan with 2 weeks made up, maybe where we were all expecting him to be going into Utah State in that opener. He's hasn't had the completion percentage that maybe people were expecting. Of course, was in the low to mid 60s during that championship run in 2021 at Michigan. He's around 56% right now, but been a little banged up, still trying to make some chemistry work with all the weapons on this Hawkeye offense. But here's Cade yesterday talking with the media, just talking about how good he's feeling now heading into week 3 of the season.
It's feeling really good. I mean, this is the most healthy I've felt in a month. So this will be my first full practice, first full week of practice of not missing anything and participating in everything. So, I mean, I'm excited to just be fully back in, and it's a relief.
That's what should get Hawkeye fans, I think, more excited than anything else, that back fully at practice, not missing anything. We've talked so much, and I'm sure we'll touch on this show, about how they're just steps away from busting out some big plays. And so the fact that he's able to be 100% into practice, that could be a scary offensive thought if you're Iowa.
I think it's the biggest news of the season so far that Cade McNamara is 100% healthy. Again, this is a guy who, and he touched on this a little bit, just answering questions about his journey back to getting healthy and then getting hurt a little bit, banged up. He was at a point 9-10 months ago where his biggest focus was, I just want to be able to bend my knee 60 degrees. People have talked about the offense isn't looking exactly like people were hoping it would. I think they just thought gangbusters across the board and that everything was going to be different. He just hasn't had a ton of time to practice within the structure of the Hawkeye football program because he's been recovering from a surgery and then coming back and hurting the quad, missing a couple weeks, and now kind of, not 100% in practice. The reason some of that timing might be a little off, and we'll talk about just how close they are to getting that offense to click, he just hasn't had the reps. I think that's been huge, and I don't think you can really understate how important just getting that timing is for a guy who's coming into a no program. And yeah, they spent time on the West Coast and getting acquainted, just knowing each other as human beings over the last handful of months, and that's certainly important. But if you're not out there going through the reps and running the routes and making the throws, it's tough to make that really blast off on game day.
I have to think, too, based on the press conference that we were in, I forget exactly the number of years that Cade said, but he talked about how since he'd been injured, that's the first time in, 15 years or something like that.
That he hadn't been able to play or do anything really.
Play, basically on a regular basis throughout the week. Maybe not every day, but maybe 5 days a week or something. And so that just says a lot about how much I'm sure he has missed the game of football. And you've spoken about how excited he seems to be out there, excited in the post-game press conference. I'm sure that lends a lot to that, the fact that he's had to sit out so much over the last year plus, and now he's back there and he's just enjoying being back as a football player again.
He's had so much non-football stuff to worry about related to football, but just trying to get healthy. Again, just the simple thing of trying to bend your knee all the way. That he's on cloud 9 right now, and it's been really cool to see that. People have talked about, it's obvious he's hurt. I think a lot of the fact that this happened in front of 6,000 people at Kinnick at an open scrimmage, we've talked about that a little bit, of just the starkness that can kind of seep into your thoughts and your analysis of things. People have talked about, well, he's clearly hurt out there. I really didn't, as well as he was able to move, and we'll talk about the O-line and its pass protection the last couple of weeks as well. He didn't really look hurt, even when he moved around a little bit. At least to me, maybe I'm viewing things through black and gold colored glasses. Like, he looked all right. Like, if I didn't know that he had been hurt, if I didn't watch it happen, I wouldn't have noticed. What I noticed was, timing's a little off. And I think that's the big thing, that when you're looking at it, like, something's off about the offense. They're better, but what's missing? I think it's 2 weeks of practice in August that now has been made up for going into September. So hopefully that will be the key to getting that offense to get really where we're waiting for them to see. That was a big storyline, talking with players and with Coach Ferentz yesterday. It's just, this offense is right there, whether it's a step, a block, whatever it may be. The fans seem to see that. The media seems to see that. The players say they see it too.
Like I keep saying, like, as we keep practicing, as we keep doing it, it's all going to come for us. And like you're saying, it's such small misses, it's such small assignments, and that play a bigger role in things. But we know that if we handle those situations, and we've been working hard and like watching film and trying to get those things, staying after practice, getting different catches, getting different situations to make sure that when we're in that situation again, it goes the way we want it to go.
I think this is hopefully the week that we all lock in, and it's usually like one guy making a mistake, you know what I'm saying? That's how like the offense is. On defense, you could have one guy make a play, and it's a good play for the defense, right? On offense, you could have just one guy not do his job, and it screws up the play for everybody. So just getting everybody on the same page is what we need, and I think we're close to getting it, and we're going to keep pushing and working our asses off to get there, and I'm super optimistic about this offense.
I definitely do think we're continuing to take steps. I think one of the biggest things that we were talking about after our first week was just kind of stuff that we can control, and I think we had a lot of false starts the first week. We had some, stuff that was in our control that we didn't do a very good job of. And, we were able to clean all that up in the second week. And I also thought we did a really good job of, I thought we ran the ball really well too. So, I think now we're just trying to put the pieces together. I think we're really close.
Yeah, everyone feels it. I think everyone sees it. And again, it's, you heard from Deontay there. Deontay has one catch this year. We're expecting so much from him. He's finally healthy. There's that one little missed throw to him from Cade that, if that catches, that's a big play. The overthrow to Seth that even they come off the field and Brian Ferentz is looking just like, yep, timing. Like, that's how it goes. They're at least, there's a sense of relief. It almost feels of like, hey, we were nowhere near hitting some of these bigger ones or having as many explosive plays as they do this year. They're ahead on explosive plays, offensive touchdowns, and yards. I think they feel it just like, hey, we're a few reps away from not even really needing to think about maybe I'm simplifying it over too much, but they feel like they're right there. They really feel that.
If anybody ever has any questions about why teams schedule out of conference, if you want to call them lower tier opponents from FCS or group of 5 teams, this is, I think, a big reason why, because teams really are still cleaning things up over those first few weeks of the season. Don't hear me wrong. I'm not referring to Iowa State in that way. They do not fall into that category. But Utah State and Western Michigan do fall into that category. And I think that, again, lends to why teams schedule them early, so that if you're Iowa and have some missed throws, have some blocking things you're getting cleaned up, have Cade getting back to health, that's exactly why they have these games to start the season, so that they can get those things cleaned up. When you get to week 4 against Penn State, you're hopefully firing on all cylinders.
I think there's a big it can also be a big litmus test, because as we've talked about, Iowa State's got a great defense. They looked really, really good. I mean, that secondary is one of the better secondaries in the entire country, led by TJ Tampa. Utah State threw a bunch of different stuff at them, and we heard kind of the things that were presented to them. And again, it's week 1, so you're watching all this old tape on a team that's got 60 new transfers and a lot of, everything has its own little challenges and variables that you can work to improve on. And now you come into a Western Michigan team that, again, kind of the opposite of Utah State, lost a bunch of guys to the transfer portal that I was going to end up seeing against Minnesota come later in October, and has a new coach there in Lance Taylor as well. But mentioned Nico's bite of just, one person, on offense, if they don't run the right route or block gets missed, everything can kind of go haywire. The O-line was such a huge focus coming into 2023. A young group last year. All that experience comes back. You bring in a couple transfers as well. The O-line has looked great, particularly in pass protection. I mean, they spring the big run with Jazz, and there were a few bigger chunk plays against Iowa State. But, I mean, there has been just a full rainbow around Cade at times in terms of pass protection. He's only been sacked twice. This is a unit that gave up 3 sacks a game in 2022. Nick DeYoung was there, a guy that Kirk has talked about that can kind of plug in anywhere. He's one of the more experienced guys on this offensive line and has been a big part of the improvement. I asked him just what he has seen and to evaluate where they are 2 games in that offensive line for Iowa.
It's just back to fundamentals and experience is definitely big too, but obviously that's an area that we weren't the best at, and everyone took that as something that we weren't going to accept anymore and set a new standard, and obviously we still have however many more games. We have a game on Saturday, and so I think the biggest thing is not being satisfied with you're 2 games in, you've had pretty good pass pro. Okay, yeah, we'll sit back because we've done it now. Like we're every day coming out. Even if it's pretty good, we're not satisfied. Sure.
And I think that's even furthered by the fact that, as we heard in the presser yesterday, Western Michigan's going to blitz quite a bit, and they've got 5 sacks already this year. So if there's a true final non-con litmus test for this offensive line of, hey, you've had great pass protection, Broncos are going to throw a lot at you. So can you keep the pocket clean for a now healthy Cade and help him get the ball out to the weapons he's looking for?
Some people say that they come pretty hard at the quarterback, that Western Michigan front line does.
According to things I've seen on Twitter, that's exactly.
I've heard that.
Boy, yeah.
Yeah, this definitely is a what do we have game, I think. I think we all agree that Western Michigan might be one of the weakest opponents on Iowa's schedule.
They're young, man. They're just, again,
they're young.
They got hit by the transfer portal, so they've got an 8th-year tight end who's been all over the place in his college career, but there are so many freshmen and sophomores. Their starting quarterback's a sophomore, but he and started 7 games last year, but again, he's a sophomore. They just lost a lot of their seniority to the transfer portal. A lot of it, the big ones going to Minnesota.
John Steppe, he was on our Eye on the Hawks, airing Thursday night at 6:30 on Fox 28.
5 o'clock, there's baseball on.
What is it, 5 o'clock?
Yeah, this week there's MLB on. Yeah, Fox.
Okay, good to know.
Screwing up the schedule.
Okay, 5 o'clock. Watch it.
Got a lot of moving pieces here.
So John was saying, he was like, when I was putting together the schedule, kind of ranking their listed opponents, he was like, I definitely would put Western Michigan as 12 out of 12 teams that they play, that they're at the bottom there.
It's tough, a new coach, the transfer portal, as much as we've seen, particularly in Boulder, just how much the transfer portal can help a team year to year.
Yeah.
Boy, if you're on the other end of the stick, you can really get in the muck really quickly. And again, Western Michigan, 7 years removed now from winning the MAC, running the table, going to a Cotton Bowl where they played neck and neck with Wisconsin after Badgers got out to a big league. It's just so things can change so quickly if there's not steadiness and consistency and whatnot. So it's a tough spot in Kalamazoo.
I mean, as much as I always preach how big, coaching at the high school level is everything. If you get a great coach, you're going to have a great team year in and year out. And the college level, I feel like it's maybe not quite the same, but it's similar in a lot of ways. And Western Michigan is a prime example, as is Jackson State, where it's like you've got a great coach and they get you to the point where you are nationally recognized, getting a lot of national attention. You're a great team that, goes to you said the Cotton Bowl that Western Michigan went
2016,
to when PJ Fleck was there. Deion Sanders had Jackson State playing great, but it's like as soon as those coaches leave, it's just like you're toast again. Jackson State's been terrible
tough
this year, and Western Michigan has been nowhere even near a semblance of what they were when PJ was there.
Yeah, won at home in their opener against St. Francis, and then again went to Syracuse last week, scored on the second play of the game, a 75-yard touchdown run, and then gave up 45 unanswered before halftime, gave up another one in that loss to the Orange, and just, I just keep going back because I hate saying they're just bad. Like, they're a young team. That 2013 team that came to Iowa City, that one win Iowa has against Western Michigan, that was a young team too. 59-3, and everything went Iowa's way that day in 2013. But a lot of those guys that got in, Corey Davis, who ended up being the all-time leading receiver in the NCAA, he was a freshman on that team. Zach Terrell, who went and won the Werfel Award and holds every Western Michigan passing record, he was a freshman that really got his first game action there. So this is a Western Michigan team that could be pretty darn good down the road, but chances are, and we'll get to our predictions, maybe you're already figuring out what we're going to say at the end, but this is a team that's going to have to take some lumps. Lance Taylor's a first-time head coach, is going to have to take some lumps as well. One of the lumps that we haven't had to see, I guess we should jump into this too, because Mike spent a lot of time on this, just what the MAC has done against Iowa. Again, Western with those 2 wins in 2000 and 2007, the one loss to Iowa coming in 2013. Central Michigan, folks, watched the Chippewas come into Kinnick in 2012 and knock them off on a field goal there. And then, of course, Ball State, Kent State, we've seen them a few times. Miami, Ohio has been a popular one the last couple of years as an opener for Iowa as well.
A couple of those losses for Miami came with Roethlisberger at quarterback. Iowa played 2 games against Roethlisberger, I think.
They played once in Oxford, too.
Yeah.
Road game. Yep. Before we get on the defense, though, I did want to ask about the offense. And we're talking about how young this Western Michigan team is, probably one of the weaker teams. What do you guys think? Scoring output, passing and rushing yards output, like what kind of level do you hit this weekend where Hawkeye fans are thinking, okay, I'm satisfied? Because
I think you got to break 30. I mean, again, the fans thought they were going to be averaging 35 a game coming out the gates. That hasn't happened, or at least that was their hope. For those who are worried about contractual numbers, if they were to score 31 in this game, they would be equaling a number that is down in paper of a number that's supposed to be hit. I think at least 4 offensive touchdowns.
Yeah.
You've got 4 through the first 2 games. You had 3 in the opener, 1 against Iowa State. I wouldn't be surprised. It's not going to be 2013 where you got 2 punt returns and 2 pick sixes. Because those games don't grow on trees. But I think you need to... 4 would be the number for me. 4 offensive touchdowns.
That would be encouraging to see. I know, like, there's 2 different ways to look at this Iowa offense. It's comparing it to last year's offense, which was one of the worst in the country. I'm comparing it to just a Big Ten team or the average in general.
Sure.
And right now, I think we all can agree that this offense is better than last year's team offense. It can actually score points and actually move the ball. But when you look at it across the board, on average, scoring offense 104 in the country, total offense 126, which is pretty low. And that's about yardage. We know Iowa gets turnovers, which we haven't this year, actually, but a lot of turnovers, I should say. Passing offense 116, rushing offense 110. And I put a little grain of salt with those numbers because I don't think they need to be in the top 20, 30, even 40 for Iowa to have a really good football team just because of their defense. But just comparing it to the rest of the country, that's kind of where we're sitting right now. So it'd be nice on a team like Western Michigan to see some offensive touchdowns and a lot of yardage from my point of view.
Yards per game, both Iowa and Iowa State are in the bottom 10 in the nation right now.
I know Western's got a decent rush defense. I think their pass offense is a little susceptible. They give up, I think, 32.5 points a game through 2 games. Again, gave up, did math, whatever it was, 48, I believe, to Syracuse, and gave up, I think, even 28 in that win over St. Francis. So
I'd almost, to answer your question, Mike, I'd almost go so far as to say that they might even need to score at least 3 in the first half for Hawkeyes to be satisfied. Like, for them to just do 2 touchdowns over the first 2 quarters of that game, I feel like would leave fans like, come on, like, we can't even do more than that against Western Michigan. I think at least 3 in the first half would need to happen for them to feel a little bit satisfied.
I think even just hitting one of those big plays, again, just not leaving as much food on the plate, so to speak. If you can hit one of those big ones, ideally 2 of them, and really show that, hey, things are back in rhythm, we're doing what we're supposed to do against a team like this, I think that'd be big for morale outside of the football
100%.
complex. So we'll see what happens there, but of course the defense continues to do their thing. Jamari Harris is back this week. Missed the last couple of games. Is coming back in. Kudos to Deshaun Lee, who was fantastic as a redshirt freshman stepping in. Gave up a touchdown against Iowa State. There was a big height differential there. I mean, that's just a tough matchup. Other than that, he was spectacular. Hopefully he'll get a chance to shine on special teams here. But Jermari is back again, going back to the end of 2021. Tough press to find anybody who was playing better on that defense, and that is certainly saying something for the Hawkeyes. Hurke and company very excited to see Jamari Harris stepping back into the starting lineup.
He's happy, he's happy to be back. You can tell football means the world to him. So obviously when he's got that opportunity back, he's just did nothing but run with it.
We're just really excited to have him back. I mean, he's just a tremendous football player and an even better person. So I'm just really excited to have him on the field and for his leadership to be out there too.
He's an experienced vet. He had a great fall camp. And just every single day, like, having that and having that depth at that position too is big too. So I think that's great. I mean, I'm really excited to have him back. It'll be my first time being able to play with him, so I'm excited.
But yeah, he's been really active. He's been great. He's had a great camp, and basically he's been with our team. Just was with us Saturday. Just didn't play the last 2 weeks, so he's fully engaged, ready to roll, and be good to get him back. The fun part, talk about the human side of things, just to watch the growth that we've seen with him over the his career. It's just been unbelievable. And last year or 2 years, I guess it's now been at least 2 years now, he's really developed into not only a good player, but a really strong leader on our team. And it's taken a lot of ownership, and talking about, mentoring young guys. He's really been active, helping younger guys try to get better.
Had at least two young guys, Deshaun Lee and Cooper DeJean at Media Day, unprompted bring up the fact that Jermari has been so instrumental in how they watch film and how they dissect things. And again, a guy who on the sideline all of 2022, that's a super lonely place, just trying to, I heard back from Cade, of just trying to get your body to move the way it used to, for him to be coming back and not just fully focused on himself, but what can I do to help these younger players really grow and step up. And to hear Hurke mention that as well. Jamari spent too much time on the sidelines. I think he's a guy, he's not going to go B.J. Lowry 2013, 2 pick sixes against the Broncos, I don't think. But I think what a cool moment that would be for him to have a big hit or an interception right away and really make an impact and fully make a statement of, I'm back and it's about damn time.
January 1st, 2022 was his last game that he played for Iowa. I think it was one of the players, I forget even who it was I was talking to, that said that they've just told Jamari, like, hey man, you just got like 2 extra bonus warm-up weeks. Like we've gone out there and gotten a little bit bruised up and roughed up by Iowa State to a certain extent. Like, we were recovering a little bit, but you're like totally fresh and you're ready to go now. So I think he's going to come out there with a full head of steam.
I think he's super excited to be back too. Just talking to him at Media Day and hearing about him sitting back, and I'm sure as he's mentored those younger guys, he's taken a little time to really sink in his film study too. And yeah, I just hope he can really bust out.
I'm glad he's getting a Western Michigan game as his first game back, because it would have been really tough coming in the Big Ten play, haven't played in a full year just like Cade, Yeah. There's going to be some rust, there's going to be some cobwebs, and hopefully this game will help him get back up to where he was, because he was playing really well at the end of that year.
It's a good way to get ready for Penn State coming up next week, certainly. So Jamari Harris is back. Noah Shannon is not. Kirk Ferentz announcing yesterday, and we'll get a statement from Noah as well, that NCAA has denied his appeal for that season-long suspension related to the gambling probe. Again, he came out and said that he had made a bet and was going to be going through some sort of punishment. It's been revealed that it was on an UI athletic event that was not football, which does go to a season-long suspension. They tried to appeal, was denied, so Noah Shannon's Hawkeye career is over. Let's hear from Kirk Ferentz, and a certainly disappointed head coach who knows it's the end of the road for a really good player and a really good person in the program.
I'm not quite sure what went into the decision, but what I can tell you is that Noah's just a tremendous young man, has been, came back for his 6th year, and just a highly respected leader in our locker room and certainly with our coaching staff. So I feel very, very unfortunate, and our goal is to keep him with the program. Keep him close, have him remain as a part of the team. Obviously, he can't play, but he's run a heck of a race, and we're just really disappointed with this whole thing. He's been honest throughout this whole process, very transparent, and I think about as honest you could be. Yeah, and one thing I do want to emphasize, he did not break any laws at all. My wife made that point a couple of weeks ago, just an emphasis, and he is guilty of an NCAA violation. He was very upfront about that, and So, that is that. But basically, I don't agree with or understand, quite frankly, the decision, especially when it comes to the severity of the punishment. And to me, that's really disappointing, especially considering our current environment right now, which, believe me, the last couple of months, I'm a lot more in tune to than I had been, certainly. And probably the most disappointing thing, I think the panel that heard the appeal had an opportunity to really do something, make a decision that, to me, would reflect reason and also reflect the changing environment. And, they failed to do so.
In the amount of time since, go ahead. We've got the Shannon.
Sure, yeah. So here's Noah's statement that was released. I think right around the time Kirk was making these statements, he just says, Noah does, I want to apologize to the fans and everyone who supports Iowa football. I made a mistake and I have taken responsibility for it. I am heartbroken that I will not be able to play alongside my brothers again, but I plan to stick with the team and support them in any way that I can going forward. I want to say thank you to my family, Coach Ferentz, the coaching staff, all of my teammates and friends for their unwavering support. I'm going to make sure that this mistake does not define me or my career going forward. Let's just lay it out there. This stinks. This stinks for a kid that adult by age, but really just a young man who we've heard so many good things about. And again, one mistake, one NCAA violation, and 6 years gone.
Yeah. It has similar vibes, even though it's a different scenario totally. It has, my heart goes out in a similar way to Aaron Rodgers, just in terms of a lot of hype, a lot of buildup. A lot of people were looking forward to Noah Shannon in his last year as a Hawkeye. Potentially might have been one of the captains on this year's team with how much he was respected and how long he'd been around. And, his last year is over before it begins, similar to what Aaron Rodgers is going through.
The parallel I've seen some people draw, and it's a different scenario because Drew Ott was just really banged up, but that was another NCAA decision to not give Drew Ott an extra year that Kirk really was not happy about that. Because, again, Drew Ott was a key part early of that 2015 Rose Bowl squad and then just got hurt. And I think still went back into a game when he was still hurt, didn't know the severity of it, but just another one of those situations where it's just, again, as Kirk pointed out, there was no crime committed. It was an NCAA violation, and now the big discussion is, does this punishment fit the violation? And
I know we don't officially know, what he bet on. We know it was an Iowa team, not the football
he got caught
team.
up in the emotion of something, so
yeah,
people can jump to conclusions.
There's a lot of rumors. I'm not going to say them, but a full year suspension for not betting on the team you play on is, unless he knew, and obviously we don't know what happened. I just have a hard time believing that a 12-game suspension is fully warranted in a situation like this, especially if the money amount wasn't, sky high. We actually don't know that either, but it sounds like he made one bet, so I'm doubting it's huge, But I was wondering if Kirk was just expecting like a 6-game suspension, bump down, which, I'm not. Again, we don't know the exact details, but it does seem a little extreme.
I don't think there's any way this isn't just kind of meant to be a precedent setter, that the NCAA wants to make an example of him, even though they might not think that he deserves it, but they just want to make an example and show that they're serious about this. I was curious to ask you guys, in the time since this has elapsed, the last 24 hours or so, if you could give a percentage of either just online, message board, Twitter, reaction to it, how much is people that are like, man, that's really unfair, versus yep, that was the right decision. I'm glad that the NCAA made that call.
I feel like it's been this is a ballpark. 1 out of every 10 comments is well, that was the rule, should have followed it.
Yeah.
And it's just very straight-laced, where like everything else in the world nowadays, and Kirk, again, continues to talk about it's in their faces. This is the world we live in. You have to understand the nuance and scenario and variables out there. That losing a year because you pushed a button on your phone. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's really, you boil it down to something like that, and that's the parallel I keep drawing of just you order your dinner on your phone, and then the next one you can place a bet that could compromise your entire NCAA eligibility. It's such a tough spot, and I think to your point as well, somebody had to be the example. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, Noah Shannon and Hunter Deckers is another name that comes up in those guys at Iowa State. Those now are served up to every other team in the NCAA, hey, here's what can happen. Mm-hmm. Look what these guys did or are accused of doing. And yeah, but I feel like the majority of people online have been that's something's not matching up here, but then you have every once in a while just
right.
That was the rule. And yeah, if you want to go to the line, yeah, it was the rule, and shouldn't have done it, but again, a lot of discussion still.
Yeah, I feel like most of the people that I see that are, like, yep, that was a rule, sorry about you, bud, are, probably Iowa State fans or somebody who has, a beef with Iowa to some degree or another. That's at least what I'm seeing, and maybe that's...
You're accusing people on the internet of trolling?
I haven't seen too many of that, to be honest.
Really?
I've seen everyone being like, this is dumb.
To the same degree, it's probably
It's like
mostly
that UNC
Iowa
kid.
fans out there that are sticking up for him and feel like, oh, that's not fair. So there's definitely bias all around. So there's, you could look at it both ways. But yeah, even as somebody who's, a media personality, not a TV person, but somebody who works in the media that was like, yep, this was the right decision by the NCAA. He broke the rule and he's compromising the integrity of the sport, and he needs to serve that suspension. I'm glad it got upheld. And I'm like, come on, man. Like, give me I mean, at the end of the day, if your world is 100% black and white, then yes, he broke the rule and they made the suspension and that's that. But, they had a chance to look at the character of this kid that has not had any other, to my knowledge, any other legal issues or any other infractions against him, and maybe said like, maybe 6 games, maybe even 9 games. He can play the last few games of the year or something.
Yeah, just it's tough, but glass half full, he's going to be with the program in some capacity. And now, again, he came back for that 6th year, had an opportunity to leave for the league last year. Well, now he gets a few more months of prep for the combine or pro days or whatever he needs to. And boy, if Noah Shannon continues to be the player that we did see before all this happened, he's going to get into an NFL camp and he'll hopefully do something well. Of course, the defensive line not going to be the same without Noah Shannon, but it's always next man in Iowa City, and there's been a few people that we've seen plug in there. Aaron Graves, Y.A. Black, Jeremiah Pittman have stepped into the interior. Ethan Hurkett is a kid on the exterior, one of the DNs, a little bit of linebacker hybrid. What a moment for him on Saturday in the Cy-Hawk game. The kid from Cedar Rapids, Xavier, making the 4th down stop to seal the Cy-Hawk win for the Hawkeyes. And talked to Joe Evans and Jay Higgins on Tuesday about him and his journey 2 years ago this week, 3rd game of the season in 2021. He got hurt against Kent State, ended up missing the rest of his redshirt freshman year. He was already getting a little in, so a big moment for a guy that has a ton of respect from his teammates, and in the case of Joe Evans, was just absolutely giddy to see what he did on Saturday.
He is one of the hardest workers I've ever been around, and for him to make that play, I was, gosh, dude, I was so pumped up for him. We hang out a lot, me and Hurke do, and just to see that play and him being able to, we watched on the film like he's running at the, at the crowd. That's something that I love, and I was just so happy for him because you should see, what he's doing in practice and how hard he works.
A common quote from Coach Wallace is everybody needs to practice like Hurke. And what's crazy is I think last week was the hardest he's been practicing, his best practice. So when that play happened, I don't think anybody defensively was surprised. It just made sense. You just got a guy who comes to work every day, and I just feel like our team is full of guys who just come to work every day.
The kid, I don't know, just balls to the wall all the time. He is just giving 100% effort every single play, and that's something that's really gonna, push him forward. And honestly, in whatever he does, I think that he can go to the league. That's just me. I'll say that about any player here because that's what I think. And but in any aspect of life, that's going to take him far.
One of my favorite things about talking to players, again, it's been a while since I've been on the media beat, seeing them get excited about what one of their teammates did. And for Joe Evans to be, again, Joe Evans, this was his game, so to speak. The Swarm held back, so the Ames native could go take the Cy-Hawk back in Ames for his Hawkeyes. For him to be that excited about number 49, what he did to see Ethan celebrating there, that's just such a cool moment. And then to hear that Seth Wallace points to his linebacking core and say, hey, you see 49, do what he's doing there, and talk with Coach Wallace a little bit over Zoom for availability earlier today, and he echoed the same thing. That's a kid that just comes in and does it the quote-unquote right way every day. And so just a cool moment for an Eastern Iowa kid to have a big play in the Cy-Hawk game. But again, just a nice little way to wrap up our time on the pod here before we get into picks of just like what a cool moment that was. And again, so much talk about the offense and so much focus, deservedly so, on Joe Evans having a big day at home in his Cy-Hawk finale. But Ethan Hurkett, a kid who was banged up and has had to work his way back, and now Joe's talking about him having a chance to play on Sunday. It's just a super cool thing to see.
Yep. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen him enough to know if he's got a chance to play on Sundays, but that's kind of the effort that I think that we could expect out of a guy who's played under Dwayne Schulte, honestly. I mean, he's a guy who raised up kids well, along with all the assistants there. Xavier, of course, too. Tom Lilly playing a part in that
Jim
training
O'Connell, folks. Jim O'Connell, who's the Phil Parker to Dwayne Schulte, so to speak. Just been a defensive coordinator for them for a long time. Coaches those guys up, and and Wallace even said that. He's listed off Quinn Schulte, of course, starting safety, and then Jackson Rexroth, who's a former quarterback at Xavier, turned linebacker for Iowa. I just said those guys come into Iowa City, and because I think just familiarity with the program, only being 30 miles away, we know their learning curve is a little short. Like we have expectations for those kids, and Ethan Hurkett certainly starting to live up to some expectations, and it's all the sounds is that he's continuing to raise expectations for the way he practices as well.
One thing I was going to add is that as we were talking to John Steppe today, he said that he thought the deepest part of this team, at least defensively, was the defensive line, and a guy like Hurkett is definitely contributing to that as well. Even with Noah Shannon being taken out of the equation, Hurkett is filling in well, and they just have a wealth of talent there on the D-line.
And that D-line will go up against Western Michigan and the Broncos come Saturday. Let's get into our picks. We've already taken a few glances at Western Michigan, told you a little bit about what to expect. So let's go through our Big Ten West scenarios here, and we'll start with the top one, a big one for the Illini coming off that big loss at Kansas. Illinois hosting Penn State, 7th-ranked team in the country. 14.5-point favorites are the Nittany Lions in Champaign. We'll start with you, Mike.
Yeah, I am done. I told you on Sunday I'm hopping off the Illini bandwagon. So I think Penn State is just too good. Drew Aller however you say his name, is just amazing. I think they're going to be a contender for the Big Ten East, and so I'm going Penn State.
That is a bit of a tough line for me, the 14.5. Nicholas Singleton, 4 rushing touchdowns this year already for Penn State. Really good. They've looked good, and Illinois has looked so subpar over their first 2 games. I've got to think that Penn State will cover that line. Yeah, I think I'll pick the Nittany Lions to cover.
It makes sense, and I had Penn State as my team to win the East in the preseason. This is such a gut check game for Illinois, and I think Bielema and company stand their ground. I don't know if they win this game. I don't think they win this game, but I think they can cover 14.5. So I'll take Illinois plus 14.5. I don't think they're going to go to 9 overtimes or whatever it was last time they met up there in Champaign, but Luke Altmaier has looked good enough that I think he can hang with a few punches that Aller and that offense put up. But I think they can cover that spread, and I think Illinois at least shows why they are still held in some regard in the West. I think they can hold court a little bit and cover. All right, move on to Wisconsin coming home after a road loss that we all called last week, having Wazoo cover the 6.5. They are back home in Madison hosting Georgia Southern. Wisconsin, a 19-point favorite against Georgia Southern.
I'll go first again. I think Wisconsin bounces back. They get a easier team on the schedule than going on to Wazoo. So even though it's 19 points, I guess I'm going to be riding a lot of big spreads this week, but I'll take Wisconsin.
Yeah. I guess I am thinking that 19 points is a lot for me against a Georgia Southern team that's looked pretty decent against a couple of, they
score points, man.
The Citadel, I guess I don't know what to think about them. A 34-0 win, 49-35, they beat UAB. Back there at QB, they got your boy Davis Brin, thrown for 4 touchdowns, 562 yards this year, a couple of 100-yard running backs. I don't think that Georgia Southern wins this game, but I think they keep it within 19.
Former head coach of USC, Clay Helton, also leading the Eagles there. 19's a big spread. I think Wisconsin bounces back too. I wonder if they win this thing by like 17, though. That Georgia Southern team can put up points. So I'm going to take the Eagles to cover. Wouldn't be shocked if Mike's the only one that gets this one right. I could see Wisconsin because again, Mordecai made a couple eyeball bulging throws in Pullman. Cam Ward just kind of outdueled him there, but I'll take Georgia Southern to cover. But I wouldn't be surprised if Wisconsin pulls off like 45-10 or something like that.
We'll
see. Minnesota, after 2 games at home to open, they hit the road to go to Chapel Hill, taking on Drake May and North Carolina, 20th ranked team in the country. Gophers are a touchdown dog heading to NC.
This one's probably the best Big Ten West game, I think, just from a non-con standpoint. Syracuse-Purdue, you can make the argument.
Yeah.
It's that Syracuse team that just played Western Michigan. I think Minnesota's got a good defense. We'll see. Drake May, though, is Heisman, considered a Heisman favorite, top 10 or whatever. And UNC just had a tough game against App State, where it's a little closer than you'd think after blowing the doors off South Carolina week 1. I still think North Carolina again, I think Big Ten teams, when they travel on the road, it's a little less.
It's tough for sure.
It's a tough environment, so I'll take North Carolina to cover that spread.
Well, Marion Hampton is kind of outside of Drake May, has been great for UNC, averaging 135 yards a game. He scored 5 rushing touchdowns this year. This is a tricky one, but I don't know. I think North Carolina wins. I guess I would say I think Minnesota's gonna keep it closer than 7.
I think Gophers keep it close too, so I'll take Gophers plus the 7. Darius Taylor showed out against Eastern Michigan. Between him and Sean Tyler, the former Western Michigan running back that transferred there, they've got the running game back. That thing that they couldn't really do against Nebraska. Nebraska's got that defense is really good and just kind of ran out of gas against Colorado. But I think that defense can keep May in check. I don't know if Minnesota can win outright, but I think they can keep it to within a field goal, maybe win by a field goal. But between that running game starting to get its legs and Kaliak Manis, we know the Army has and the weapons he's got around there, Minnesota can go to Chapel Hill and maybe come out 3-0. We'll see. It'll be a heck of a game there between 2 really good teams. Moving then to another part of North Carolina, Duke, 21st in the country. Of course, big upset over Clemson earlier this year. They are hosting Northwestern. Wildcats coming off their first win of the season against UTEP, 18.5-point dogs on the road in Durham.
Duke has only allowed 7 points in each game. I mean, their defenses look great. They've already got 3 100-yard rushers this year. Riley Leonard, their quarterback's one of them. I'd take Duke to just destroy Northwestern, I think.
Michael?
I think I'm just looking at it, and I was probably going to pick every favorite. Looking that way, but I don't think Northwestern can hang with Duke. I watched that Clemson game week 1, and Riley Leonard is definitely a dual threat. He's a really good underrated quarterback in the ACC, and I got Duke on this one.
Again, I'm just going to keep taking teams to cover, road teams to cover. I'm going to keep putting faith in this Northwestern squad. They looked really good against a UTEP team that might be a little down from where they were last year. They were a pretty solid group of 5 team, but 18.5 is a big spread. I think even if they can keep it within 17. Again, Northwestern's not going to be great this year, but I liked enough of what I saw in Evanston last week, so I'll take the Wildcats to cover plus 18.5. Northern Illinois, an 11-point dog heading to Lincoln to take on Nebraska. Again, Nebraska coming off back-to-back losses at Minnesota and at Colorado. Really felt like they just ran out of time against the Buffs, at least in a sense of just too many turnovers, getting thrown out on the field, and really Colorado piled on in the back portion of that game. Otherwise, Nebraska was in it. I think that defense is really, really good. So, Mike, I'll have you start off again.
Yeah. Well, you just want to go last every time, don't you? I'm catching on.
I'm gonna take Nebraska to cover, even against Rocky Lombardi, whose dad, of course, was a head coach at Wash back in the day, and he's a Valley grad. Good to see him back and healthy. I know he's been banged up there in DeKalb, but Nebraska, I think maybe this is a game where Sims protects the ball. Again, if he's not turning the ball over, he's electric. And I think Nebraska getting home for the first time in 23, I think they hold court and really get a definitive win that shows, okay, when they play a clean game, they're dangerous.
This one is tough for me. I watched that Colorado-Nebraska game, and their defense did look really good in the first half, and Colorado did, they were in the fourth quarter, and I think a lot of Hawkeye fans were like, let's get this game going so we're not delayed, and they were still throwing the ball with their second-string quarterback. But can Sims protect the ball?
That's the question.
11 is a lot for this team that's 0-2. You know what? I'm just going to go Northern Illinois. I think Nebraska's going to win by 10.
Wow.
That works.
Week 1, they had I think it was Max Preps that put out a map of each state in the country and the starting quarterbacks in Division I football that are from each state, at the FBS level, I should say. Iowa had one, and that is, of course, Rocky Lombardi over at Northern Illinois.
Cam Miller repping for Solon at North Dakota State.
Yep.
There's at least two out there.
Yep. But, yeah, Northern Illinois stinks. They're terrible. They lost to Southern Illinois 14-11. They only beat Boston College by 3. This team stinks. Northern Illinois is real bad.
They're human beings.
Nebraska is – it would amuse me to no end to see Nebraska lose this game. Don't get me wrong. I would love to see it happen, but no, they're gonna beat them by, I'd say, 25 or so.
Nice, yeah.
Syracuse, again, a team coming off a big win over these Western Michigan Broncos. Going to West Lafayette to take on Purdue. Syracuse, a 2.5-point favorite.
I can start with this one. I'm going to pick Syracuse. I think they're a lot better than Purdue. I don't think Virginia Tech is as good as they usually are. So that win last week doesn't do much for me.
It's a road win, though.
It's a road win, yeah. Going to Blacksburg.
Not to show my hand.
No. But 2.5 win by a field goal. Yeah, I think Syracuse does that.
This was the hardest one for me to pick. I can't hardly make heads or tails of either program yet. Syracuse is beat up on some lower tier teams. Purdue, I don't know what to make of their opponents. So win at Vatech is nice. They lost to Fresno State. Who knows if they're going to be any good or not. I guess I would lean just with the home team. I think I'll take Purdue in this one.
I'll check on Fresno State since
they're 2-0. They beat Eastern Washington, a FCS team last week.
In overtime, yeah.
So
Washington's a tough team. I'm going to take Purdue to cover, plus 2.5. Again, Hudson Card's a really good quarterback. Tyrone Tracy's had a couple really nice plays for.
Scored a touchdown week 1, right?
Had a kick return,
right?
Something like that. I mean, he's what they're using him mostly at running back now, which he seems immensely comfortable in. Obviously, we saw him.
Good to see him
show out against what? Yeah, it's really cool to see him get his touches and. Just another guy to worry about coming to Iowa City for homecoming first weekend in October. And now we turn to Iowa City, Iowa, back in the rankings, 25th in the country, hosting Western Michigan. The Hawkeyes are a 28.5-point favorite, having not scored 28 points at any point this season. What are our thoughts as we wrap up?
This is a really big spread.
That's a big spread.
There's been a lot of Hawkeye openers in the past where I've bet on Iowa to cover. Around 28 to 30 points, and I'm just sitting there waiting and sweating.
Does it happen?
Sometimes it does.
Yeah.
I think in this case, I think Iowa will cover. I think they'll score 35, 40 points, and I think the defense holds. And the only thing that could challenge that spread is if the second teamers, in the fourth quarter let a late touchdown in. But I'll pick Iowa.
I think that, I'm going to take Iowa in this one too. I just have a hard time seeing Western Michigan score a touchdown against Iowa, even if they put in their subs in the second half. I just don't see them scoring 7 points against them. I could see them getting a field goal or two maybe, but and I think that Iowa scores at least one defensive touchdown this week as well. And so I think that's going to be, I think, a talking point after this week, like, oh, well, we got to 25 points, but it was because of the defense. But long story short, I like Iowa.
Yeah, I think Iowa can cover that too. Again, that's a massive spread. Who would have thought we'd be picking Iowa to cover 28.5 points? But there's too many things working in the right direction. Cade's healthy. They're so close on a lot of things. We've already seen improvements. I wonder if it'll be the opposite, though, if this will be maybe a little slower of a start. Maybe they have like a 3-and-out to open. There's not a big play, and then people are like, oh, what's going on? And then because, again, Western's going to throw a lot at them with looks and blitzes and whatnot. So we'll see, but I think 34-3, something like that, it's something they can. And I wouldn't be
close. 34-3 would be close around that spread.
I don't think they're going to beat them by 40. I think they'll beat them. Yeah. I went 0-6 the first week for a reason. Like, who this could all blow up.
I'm kind of curious as we make these picks. I mean, these are just like in my head. Do you actually put money on all these games that were?
Not all of them.
Answer the question, Mike.
I will toot my own horn. I got a parlay last week in college football.
There you go.
Let's see. I had the under on the Colorado game, which hit. I was like, Nebraska's defense is going to hold. And then when I was sitting there, it was 0-0. I was like, yes, let's go. Wazoo plus 6.5. And the other games are escaping me right now.
Iowa one?
I didn't put Iowa on that, no.
Okay.
All right, we'll have more on Mike's betting habits and everything else coming up on Sunday. Of course, we'll have that live stream reaction on YouTube starting at noon. Again, get in the comments, ask us questions, share your thoughts on whatever comes out of the Hawkeyes and Broncos, but certainly excited to get back to Kinnick Stadium. It's going to be non-sunburn weather. Imagine that. We actually get to play in a little bit of fall weather there. So we'll recap everything for you Sunday at noon. Thanks to everybody who's been watching, subscribing, downloading, and following across all the platforms. For Mike and Owen, I'm Mitch. I think. We'll see you Sunday on the Hawks.